Hello, my name's Tom Scholey and I work for Match and Pole Fishing magazine. I'd like to talk to you today about choosing the correct reel for the job that you want to do. Now, if you walk in your local tackle shop, you'll probably see a vast array of reels on display. And knowing what each one offers and which one's right for the style of fishing that you particularly do is quite a complicated thing, or so it would appear. But when you break it down, reels are actually made up of just a few sort of key components. First of all, the drag. There's front drag, there's rear drag, and deciding the quality of the drag and whether you want it at the front or at the back of the reel is an important decision. Then there's the spool size. Now this basically can determine how far you can cast with the reel and how much line it can hold. And there's the rest of the body, which again, depending on how much you pay, can be greater or lesser quality. And there's the handle. There's single handled reels, or like this one here, there's double handled reels. Now, I'm going to focus today on fixed spool reels, and these are the reels that 99.99999% of anglers use for 99.999% of applications in this country, whether it's float or feeder fishing. Now, the reason they're called fixed spool reels is because the spool, as you can see here, stays still, and when you spin the handle, as I will do when I drag over, when you turn it, the rotor rotates around the handle. So the spool stays where it is, and the reel, or the mechanisms of the reel, moved, hence it being called a fixed spool reel. Okay, so the first thing to think about is the drag. Now, a drag is basically a mechanism that allows your reel to give out line while you're playing a fish. So say, for example, you're reeling in and a fish decides to go on a surge, the drag will release the line and avoid you getting broken. Now, there are basically two kinds of drag available. There's a front drag, as you see here, and there's a rear drag. Generally, but not always, front drag reels have a reputation of being of better quality than rear drag reels. And the reason for this is that the mechanics of a front drag reel are all contained, as you'd expect, at the front of the reel. When you've got a rear drag reel, it can't work like that because the mechanics of the reel is here, but the drag is here, so it runs all the way through the body. Now, the upshot of that is that a front drag reel is more responsive, so you can set it more delicately, which is a big advantage if you're a top flight match angler and catching a lot of fish, because you want it to kick in just at the right time, but if it's giving out line when it shouldn't be, it's counterproductive, it's costing you time and costing you fish. So front drag reels do have a slightly better reputation, but if you're somebody who works better with a rear drag reel, i.e. you're more comfortable adjusting the drag at the back, then maybe a rear drag reel would be better for you. Another term that's commonly bandied around when it comes to the mechanics of reels is ball bearings. And although it sounds all very grand and complicated, it really isn't. The simple general rule here is the more ball bearings, the better, because it increases performance of the reel, it makes it smoother, and it also means that the moving parts last a little bit longer. So the more bearings, the better in general terms. Now, in my opinion, one of the most important features of a reel, or one of the most important areas of its performance, is the line lay. And that basically means how flat the line lays on the spool. Now, the more flat it lays, the more accurate you're going to be able to cast and the further you're going to be able to cast. The problem, of course, for a consumer is that reels you buy in shops generally don't have any line on them. So that's why it's important to look at reviews and check out what you can read on the internet, etc. before making a purchase, so you can be sure that the line lay on your given reel is going to be as good as possible. Another piece of reel-related jargon which you'll often hear bandied about is a line clip, and that's basically the little clip that you find on the spool of the reel. Now, the purpose that serves is your line can clip underneath it, so when you're looking to cast to a certain distance, say you've got an island you want to cast to and you don't want to chuck it in the bushes, you want to find the right distance and cast there all day, simply slip the line under the clip, and you know then that as you cast, the feed will go the same distance every time. It's also particularly useful if you're looking to build up a bed of bait in a given area, because obviously you can keep casting into the open water where you're fishing with a feeder on, knowing that your bait's all ending up in the same spot. If you line up with a marker on the far bank and use a line clip, your accuracy will be improved tenfold. Another thing that's often banded around when it comes to reel mechanics is the gear ratio, which again can confuse people because it all sounds very grand, and when somebody says, oh, it's got a gear ratio of 5.1 to 1, as this reel has, you know, the average sort of newcomer is going to wonder what we're talking about. Well, again, it's very simple. If you watch, as I turn this handle, the reel will go around 5.1 times to one complete turn of the handle. So the rotor here turns 5.1 times for every one complete revolution of the handle. It really is as simple as that. Okay, another thing commonly talked about when you're looking at purchasing a reel is the type of handle that the reel boasts. Basically, there are two kinds. A double-handled reel like this one here, which basically means the handle's got two grips, and a single-handled reel like this one, where there's just one handle and one grip at the end of it. Which one you choose to use is very much down to personal preference. I mean, some manufacturers state that double handle reels are easier to use because you can get hold of one quicker or whatever and get a wind on a fish. Personally, I don't think it matters. I think it's personal preference. It's down to what works best for you. The only important thing to remember though is that whatever handle you do choose has got to be right for you, because you're going to be handling your reel throughout the session, so the grips need to be comfortable. And as I say, you've just got to decide whether you want a double handle or a single handle for maximum comfort for yourself. One final thing I just want to touch on, and this is getting slightly more in depth than everything else I've talked about, but some reels offer what we call a free spool facility. Now this is something that the more common course and match market has borrowed from the specimen fishing world. And all it means is your reel will have a clip on the back like this. Turn it on means when a fish takes your bait, you can pull line off the reel incredibly easily. Now, in the specimen fishing world where it comes from, that basically stops your rod getting dragged in, because you're asleep in your bivvy, off goes your bait, off goes your free spool, and it means that your rod isn't going to get dragged in. From a match point of view, it comes in because we're now seeing a lot more bolt rigs being used. So if you like to fish a method feeder, for example, or a pellet feeder, you'll often have your rod on a rest by the side of your box, so that when a fish takes it, you can stop your rod getting dragged in, and it's as simple as that, really. Okay, so I've given a very basic rundown of the mechanics of the reel and what you need to think about when making your purchase. But the most important question you need to ask yourself is where you're going to be using your reel for, because that's going to influence the exact model that you purchase. So if you're fishing big powerful rivers, for example, you're going to want something a little bit bigger in size and with a greater gear ratio and a better quality drag. And if you're fishing a small quaint estate lake for smaller fish such as crucians or skimmers. So that's the first key thing that you need to consider before making your purchase. The second thing you need to think about, which ties in very well with the first, is the style of fishing that you're looking to be doing with your reel. For example, if you're wanting a reel for float fishing, a smaller body will normally be better. Whereas if you're looking for feeder fishing and chucking a long way, a bigger body, bigger spool, etc. is going to be better. So that's another key thing to think about before making your decision. All right, the final consideration, which I'm afraid we're all limited by, is how much money you've got to spend. So the good news is, if you're all on a limited budget, you can get some great reels for a very reasonable price. What you get for paying more, I always like to compare to the car market. You can spend £1,000 on a car and it'll probably get you from A to B for a matter of weeks or months. But if you want to put more money into it, you're going to get a better quality product that's going to last you for longer. Now, when it comes down to actual performance of the product, or in car terms, the difference between a Ford and a Porsche, for example, you might only realise the true advantage as your competency as an angler rises. So if you're a top flight match angler, you'll obviously appreciate the virtues of a good quality reel, because you can play fish better, your retrieve rate's often better, the smoother, etc, etc. But if you're somebody who only goes fishing a couple of times a year, or if you're new to the sport, you'll probably get along just fine with a reasonably priced reel. and it'll give you more money to concentrate on other areas of your tackle. So something to think about. If in doubt, as I said, the team at Fishtec are always happy to help.